In this video, we'll learn how to format borderlines just using your keyboards, but in some functions of creating borderlines, we would also use the mouse, which is a very exceptional case when we're performing financial modeling. So first, we can see that the income statement, the balance sheet, and the cash flow statement, for some reason, we don't have the borderlines that we did from previous lectures. We had borderlines that separates gross profit and operating profit, borderlines that separate current assets and non-current assets. So we had multiple borderlines, but on our current spreadsheet, we don't have our borderlines, so we're going to create some. So the first thing we want to mention is that when we're creating borderlines, usually the borderline tasks are done at the end of the financial modeling process. It's simply because once you have your borderlines everywhere, it's very difficult to copy and paste around the cells because the borderlines are going to come together. Of course, we do have some paste special functions to avoid that, but it makes the task a little bit more inefficient. So we try to avoid drawing borderlines until the last parts of the financial modeling process. But anyways, how to create borderlines, you would use the Alt-H and B key for borderlines. So Alt-H-B, and it creates a whole bunch of shortcuts that you could use. You don't have to memorize these all, but the most frequent used ones are the bottom borderlines. So Alt-H-B and then O for bottom borderlines. The top borderline, Alt-H-B, P. So remember, it's not designated to the first letter, it's designated to other letters. So these two you have to memorize. But for left and right borderlines, it's relatively easy. So L for left, R for right, and N for no borderlines. This we will also use very often. And Alt-H-B, A for all borders. So up until here, these 6 shortcuts we're going to be using very frequently. For outside borders or thick borderlines, well, personally, I do remember these shortcuts, but they're relatively less important, I would say. And same goes for these borderlines as well. But one thing, Alt-H-B-D. So D creates a top and bottom borderline. This is going to be useful compared to the other ones, because when we're doing financial modeling, usually the borderlines are horizontal rather than vertical. So we rarely have cases where we draw vertical lines in our financial models. So Alt-H-B-D and Alt-H-B-O for bottom, Alt-H-B-P for top borderlines are the most frequently used borderline shortcuts. So let's start by drawing a borderline below cost of goods sold. So we want to select these entire rows. Again, Control Shift and select does the job quicker. Alt-H-B, and what we want to do is we want to draw a borderline to the bottom. So Alt-H-B-O will do the trick. Again, select these rows, Alt-H-B-O. And remember that we've also learned the F4 function. So if you think that you want to speed things up, F4 is another option to draw borderlines again. But you can also do a top borderline. Let's also practice drawing it using a top borderline shortcut. So it's going to be the top of our selected cells. So it's going to go Alt-H-B, P for top borders. Alt-H-B-O for bottom borderlines. And next you can see that we want to draw borders. Actually for this one, let's just simply draw, let's just do F4 again. But you can see that we don't have to do these twice. You could use Alt-HBD, which wants to draw borderlines on the top and bottom at the same time. So for current liabilities, what we want to do is we want to select these 4 rows. And if you do a Alt-HBD, it's going to create borderlines on the top and the bottom at the same time. Same for common equity as well. Alt-HBD or F4, because our previous command was the top and bottom borderlines. But anyways, it does the trick. Same for the cash flow statement. Let's use Alt-HBD to speed things up. Alt-HBD, F4, F4, and lastly F4. You can see, we could do these tasks much quicker if we know the proper shortcuts. Next up, we want to draw some white borderlines inside the cells. You could compare it to other cells where we did have white borderlines inside, which makes it look much better. So we're going to draw some white borderlines inside the cells. There are 2 ways that you can do. Number 1, you could use the shortcut. You could go again into Alt-HB and you could choose I for line color. And you can actually choose the line color. And then you would go into Alt-HB again. And for this case, we want to draw some lines inside the cells. But it seems that there is no designated shortcut for just creating inside borderlines. So instead, what we have to do is we want to go to Control 1, and there's going to be a pop-up on formatting the cells. You want to move to borders, and we would have to use our mouse to select the color and then the inside. And then also the left borderline is also required, so we're going to select the left borderline and press OK, and it's going to create white borderlines inside our selected cells. So usually when it comes to formatting with borderlines with colors, and it's not going to be not going to be very often that you do that. So we do recommend that you use the Control 1 key and the mouse to do those tasks. But of course, if you prefer to do it only using your keyboard, you can do it, but I think that creates much more inefficiency. And similarly, if you want to draw borderlines that have, other line styles, for example, in our financial modeling, courses, we use dotted lines for these yellow assumptions. So again, 2 ways to do this. Alt-HB Y for line style, and we want to select the second one and press enter. And then Alt-H borderline, so B, and all borderlines, so Alt-HBA this time. Whoops. And you can see that it's not doing anything because we've also changed the colors. I think it's drawing a white dotted borderline at the moment. So Alt-HBI again, we're going to change the colors again to black. Alt-HBA, and now it's coloring, it's doing the job properly. So as you've seen, of course, there were some mistakes considering the colors, but even for drawing some dotted other styles of borderlines, I would usually recommend that you use the Control 1 key, select one of the borderlines, and let's select the outside and the inside so that the lines can be everywhere, and press OK. And now we can see that it's formatted properly. And again, we also have the F4 key to repeat our previous command. So for tasks that are slightly more complex, the F4 key is going to come in more handy than simple tasks. So in this lesson, we've learned how to draw borderlines. This is one of the parts where the shortcuts are slightly difficult to use because of all the complexities in drawing borderlines. But basically, we want to select the proper cells and use Alt-H-B to draw your borderline at your desired location, and also using the Control-1 key and using your mouse to draw borderlines with colors and draw borderlines with other styles of lines.